Hello, everyone. Yes, so I'm going to jump right in and start. And I'm going to start with the lady in the house, the international producer. My first question is, what are the current obstacles for Nigerian filmmakers in accessing international markets? That's a big question, particularly now. So, can you share your thoughts, Chioma? Guys, can we settle down?
Okay.
No, no, there's a
That's a big question.
Yeah, it is.
So I think okay. So starting with the markets themselves, right? Like for a non-Nigerian filmmaker, or let me say how independent films are made globally. They start with like development and they enter this international markets to pitch, right? So by the time it gets to the life cycle of the film, if you want to make a film for a global audience, you're starting from when you have the idea, you're pitching it at international markets, you're finding co-producers to make the film, and then that's where you get to the end and the distribution and finding the audience. So the question always starts at the beginning, right? And what I have, well, the feedback really is that we're not packaging our films or our projects in a way that is getting accepted into markets, right? So in all of the markets, whether it's Durban or in Berlin or everything, you have to submit a package. And this package will now be assessed and then, accepted into the markets where you can come in as a filmmaker and start pitching the project and start meeting people. So that's step one. So I'd say starting from there, it's like our process is, because we move really quickly, right? Like we want to make anything, we move. Like that's how we are as Nigerians. We start, we go, we get it off the road. We're not waiting 3, 4, 5 years to hear back from one application, no. So I think it's understanding that there's a process to that. There's a process to getting to the international markets. And if we want to follow that process, we need to take the time now to start to develop, start to package, start these processes. And that I would say is one of the main challenges because it starts from development. And if we don't get it right there, then it's much harder to get into the next steps and the next phases and get into Cannes without a French co-producer and get into all of these spaces because there's a formula that's, if you want to play by their rules, then you have to understand it, right? So I think that's really the main challenge.
Yeah. Okay, so we need to play by the rules. We need to understand the rules, and then we can then play in those markets. Charles, what has been your experience?
It may sound a little bit funny or cheeky, but I don't think I do projects that look for the international market in that way.
Okay.
And that I have to give you a little bit of history, and that's not in any way disparaging or diminishing anyone's own ambition to go to international market. I believe, first of all, in my own local markets, I believe when you go local, you go global, you go global, or call it local. And given a history of how Nollywood started, we were doing a lot of movies. We're not doing it thinking of whether it was going to go to anybody in Hollywood or in America, but we're just doing it, and then those ones came. The audience actually came to us. Yeah. So I think basically for most filmmakers, but for a lot of filmmakers or young filmmakers, you may need to, like she said, what templates you need to follow when you are going for the international market, but you also need to understand that your audience here would have to accept you. There's got to be some measure of acceptance from your home audience, because your audience in your country is your local community. They validate what you do, first and foremost. You could be a greenhorn, but you do a film, they love it, it inspires you, you do a second one, you improve on your standards, you do a third one, and then you start thinking, okay, let's see how it is when I want to spread and go a little bit global with that. So I always believe that, if you build your audience would have to love what you are doing or see your creative, the nexus of your own creativity, where it's coming from, your creative flow, and understand where it's coming from too as well. But then, there's also the commercial part of it. So I guess people want, like Brenda was saying, that the dollars, you want to make the dollars, you want to make the money and all that. But don't lose sight of the fact that the Netflixes and Amazons and all that, they came here because they found that there was a market we had grown locally here. So you could do it and you can go global from being local. That's
okay. Great, thank you for that response, Charles. So basically, as filmmakers, we need to concentrate first on our local market, wherever that local market may be. And if we have done our work properly, we will get those eyes. But I think in addition to that, we then also need to understand what the rules will be when those eyes do come onto that project, so that if you want to go beyond here and go on there, you're set, right? That's what we're agreed.
Yeah, definitely.
That.
Yes.
Great, great. So, Kami, did you want to add to that, or?
All right. So I'll quickly add to it. I think I'm in agreement with what Chioma and Charles have said about understanding, the audience, thinking that you're first making the film for an immediate audience. But I'm also going to make an addition, which is what the idea that a film should be universal, it should have a universal appeal. And for me, I think that could be some of the obstacles, that could be plaguing filmmakers to just accessing, that global audience. And by that, I mean, not just artistically, but technically, how do we merge those two? So aside from choice of themes, and the way we treat the genres that we choose, how we embrace them and how we use that to tell authentic stories, that's very important. So how do we then use cameras to tell stories? How do we use light to tell stories? How do we use sound to tell stories? How do we use music to tell stories? So we need to go above just dialogue, and we're used to that. We're used to drama. But even if it's drama, if it's whatever genre or approach we choose, but it's how does those technical tools that we now have, that has now been democratized, how do we use it, to further that story? Because you could be watching a Korean film, and sometimes just what you see on screen, how things are put together, the art direction, the choice of colors, and how that aids the storytelling. I think those elements, that attention, to those elements is very important. I think in terms of training and capacity development, filmmakers need to start, thinking in that sense, that aside from just hearing what the actors are saying, how the other elements communicate, the theme and what the story is saying is very important, to get that access as well.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that. Technique is definitely important, and it's a very good point about how all the different elements come together, because that is what cinema is. It's supposed to bring together, or theater, is all the elements working together to produce this unique and universal story. So thank you for that. Now, in terms of cultural narratives, how can we harness those unique cultural narratives here to connect with global audiences, leveraging our rich storytelling heritage in ways that resonate globally, universally? What are the sort of techniques? I know you've mentioned some, because that question you answered, you sort of dealt with the sort of techniques. But in terms of our cultural narratives, how can we utilize that to tell our stories globally?
Well, I think I studied theater at
Yes.
my fellow thespian here, Charles Novia. And I'm just going to pick on one point, adaptation, for instance. There is a literary gap, that we're experiencing, and that gap needs to be closed. It's interesting to see some filmmakers, taking advantage of that with films like Jagun Jagun, Fumilayo Ransom Kuti and things like that. So what I mean by that literary gap is filmmakers themselves, we need to understand that we have stories, but not just to appropriate those stories, but to really tell them, in an authentic way. There's something that you always ask filmmakers, and Chioma can back me up on this, when you're pitching your film on an international level, they're going to be finding out if you're qualified to tell that story. You know, do you have the access? Do you have that connection? You know, are you rooted, you know, in that story? Because they believe that way, you know, you're very invested, you know. I'm currently working on a project as casting director, and it's around prostitution. And the filmmaker had spent about 2 years just understanding that world, you know, and just engaging with that community. And in casting for the actors, she wanted to actually cast the real sex workers, you know, just because she believes that, you know, it's a better way for her to be able to relate, you know, with that. And I feel like, and that cuts across. There's something called theater for development, for instance, where you go into communities to look at issues and just engage the community. And Chioma, we're just having a conversation where she was talking about how, you know, the Adebayo collective for her film, you know, work around that film. And it's taking advantage of things that are already existing, you know, stories that are very relatable. You know, there was an alarm around Things Fall Apart, you know, being heralded by David Oyelowo and Idris Elba. But the truth is that shouldn't be something we should be worried about, because there are a lot of culturally relevant themes and stories that we are connected to. A lot of us are from different backgrounds, 256 languages, you know, across different cultures, different stories, you know. So we've not started. We've not even started, you know, peeling the layers. So I think filmmakers should just say, look, where do I come from? You know, what stories am I qualified to tell, and how can I make that connection? Yeah.
I mean, thank you. Chioma, he already mentioned that you've just made a great film. We talked about it earlier, The Legend of the Vagabond Queen, which was very rooted in that sort of filmmaking that Sukomi is just talking about, the developmental, where the whole community is involved. So can you tell us what that process was like and how we can utilize those sorts of cultural narratives to reach global audiences?
Absolutely. I think like even the idea of an auteur, or, you know, like a writer-director, it always feels like, you know, this writer-directors have the story of their life, you know, like where they can be the only one because this is how they dealt with grief, this is how they deal with these themes in their life. So it always comes from a personal place. And writing a director statement, talking back, kind of referring to the things you now have to put together in this package. So it's, where does the story originate from, you know? Are you making it, if it's a commercial narrative, then maybe it's not, maybe it doesn't apply, right? You're just trying to do something to turn it around. But the idea of this kind of culture, with Legend of the Vagabond Queen of Lagos, it was made by 7 directors. They're called the Adebayo Collective. And they come, the story is themed around forced evictions and slum clearances. So 5 of the directors come from the slums. 2 of them were from Otodogbame, where it happened in 2015, where they were raised, where the community was raised and people died. And so it was really a story of their life. There are 2 other directors who came from outside. They were more technical guardians. But the idea was that they're telling a story of their lived experience. And so it was about extracting that now to tell a story, you know. So there were interviews done with the broader community. Development took a couple of years. You see, like with everything, these things, this way takes time. The film took 7 years to make, from top to bottom. So it took a long time. But it was this idea that, you know, we're telling, this is a story that only us can tell, or you can't tell without us. And I guess is that challenge is like and that authenticity is always clear in the storytelling. Like it's clear when you're authentic to the story, and that's why even with like old Nollywood, you know, and why it traveled, because it was so authentic and it was so fresh and it was something that we were introducing to the world, you know. So it's like it's also going back to like what travels from any country, from South Korea, we're watching, is the idea that the stories are authentic to them. And we need to keep mining for that authentic stories in the way that we tell. And that's obviously the best way to travel.
So authenticity is key in terms of being able to do a story and have it represented in the absolutely best way, authenticity. Okay, so Charles, I'm going to start with you for my next question. I'm talking about marketing strategies. What are the strategies, marketing strategies that we as Nigerian filmmakers can implement to promote our films? Here, I know you mentioned that you tend to focus more locally, but I want to still talk about international audiences as well. How can we market effectively to our local audiences and also to international audiences? You know, and I'm not going to, no, I won't go into, you just tell us what you think, what marketing strategies we can utilize.
Okay, so that's not be a misnomer. When I said doing local, doesn't mean I'm a local filmmaker. I'm just saying.
I know, no. You wanted to focus.
I'm just saying, yes, this is how it, when you are starting.
You start that way,
This
yes,
is how it is,
definitely.
because if I have any measure of global recognition, it's because I started from somewhere
yes.
and got my own audience and all that. But going to the marketing question, you can divide it into two. So let me start local first. You see, when a lot of filmmakers, or a few filmmakers, or let me use Funke Akindele as an example, because she's the present topic for a lot of few filmmakers now. How does she always get it right with her marketing, that her films become a box office hit when they come out? The last one did over 1.4 billion naira, A Tribe Called Judah. And if you study some of her marketing gimmicks, as it were, or marketing plans, or I think she brought the unique one, because she understands her audience. That's one. It's not just going to the cinema. Most people have gone to the cinema and they don't make anything, but she has a community and she puts that in. But she brought something in the marketing which was like the actors or something, doing some dancing, doing some skits. So that is what most of the filmmakers going to the cinema started following. So you want to do that, they were not saying, oh, you need to do something. But understanding the power of the social media. Most filmmakers are a little bit laid back. And I don't blame that at all. I don't feel that one's private life as a producer or as a director should be out there. There's some measure of mystique that you should have if you are a true creator. That is me personally. But a lot of filmmakers too do not understand how to also use the power of the social media to market their products. And on the international scale, what happens really when you're doing it internationally is that there are niche production PRO companies that handle that for you. I always believe in, spread, division of labor. Yes, just spread. Let you do the thinking as the filmmaker, do the thinking, and let the business end do the other work for you. Because you cannot, as a filmmaker, do all the conceptualization, shoot, and all that. If you want to make money, at the end of the day, we must learn collaboration. We don't, everybody wants to do, most people want to do, not my own, it's only me, and that's where we lose it. There are companies, there are outfits doing that. Just increase, when you are doing your budgeting, just have some extra money for that to help you, and then they'll take you through the whole gamut of the PRO. But it's also an intentional thing to get that international market to watch your movies. Just dovetailing on what she said about culture. The culture, when you want to, push your cultural film or use culture as a means of pushing out your work. She said something about 7 years of research, and that is it. You must do your research. You must be authentic to that culture that you are pushing. You don't necessarily have to be part of that culture or come from that culture, like the furore over the Idris Elba and all that when we are talking. My own stand was that I made it very public. I said, look, when Hollywood wants to come and tell your story, they will come and tell it from a commercial angle, the one that they will come and tell it their own way, because they got to make the money. But if we want to tell it, we want to tell it the way that, let us be true to the culture, let us be true, but the business end of it, in terms of the commercialism of those ventures, they're not looking at that. They're looking at how do we put $50 million here and make $250 million, and who is the biggest star. They want to look at Idris Elba. Idris Elba is going to get us that. So we got to cast him and all that. So there
that's
are
a marketing
considerations.
strategy.
That's a strategy in terms of casting, in terms of anything. You know, if you are going international, the intention, your whole outlook and your whole worldview about filmmaking changes. It's not you're not more playing as a small fish in a small river anymore, but it's a big. You want to be a big fish in an ocean.
Yeah. Okay.
So they say people should be clapping small. Let's feel some little
clap
bit,
small, please.
so that we know that we are
A
talking.
round of applause. Thank you, Charles. I'm going to ask Chioma if you can just say a few things, because I mean, you made a film recently. You were producer for 2 different films, actually. And I just want to know what sort of marketing strategies did you utilize? Because they're very different films. The 2 films that I'm talking about are very different. And I just want you to maybe give us a few tips, or maybe what strategy you might have used.
Okay, because so for I guess for filmmakers and for the people in the room, I think to start with, especially if you're, I guess, writer directors or you're making films, the best strategy is a good product, right? So you can't, maybe you can, but starting now, the best thing is like, how can I make a really good film, at whatever scale that it is. And that is always, even if it doesn't get to the audience that you wish it to get to, it's a calling card for the future. Right, so there is the marketing of, I need to sell this film now, and I need to put this budget together, and I need to have the plan for it. But there's also the marketing of self. I want to be known as somebody who makes these things in this way. So I think that is really key as a starting point, right? So, because you might be making a short film, or you might be making kind of short content. There's so many people who've made the remake of Bel Air was done because the creator made a 3-minute teaser thing where he reimagined the Fresh Prince of Bel Air, and he put it on YouTube, and Will Smith saw it, and it's now a 3-season show. So there's, especially like you said, social media is key now. So it's so useful in like putting out like the things that we need to put out. For the for the film last year, it was IP. So you talked about like adaptation, right? So how can we use existing content, existing IP or existing material in a different way? So the book was a big draw. Then we obviously had like a festival strategy. And we didn't have a cinema strategy, for example, because the idea was we're going to do festivals and then we're going to do a streamer. So you have to know like what audience are you targeting? What's your plan for the film as a producer from when you start the film? For Legend of the Vagabond Queen of Lagos, we do have a more outreach strategy. So we want everybody to see the film, right? That's the idea, because we want to be able to cause change with the film. So we are starting with festivals. We want people to organize screenings. So there's a call to action. If you can bring 100 people to screen, we want to be able to make the film available. So it's very much, it's very participatory in that way. So there are 2 kind of different strategies. So with every project, I think you have to think like, why am I doing this? Where is it going? And then you align your strategy to that. But you still, good product first.
Yeah. Thank you for that. A round of applause, please. These are gems that are being dropped, and it's important that we recognize that. I think definitely understanding, first of all, of course, as you said, good product, then understanding what the plan is from the very beginning, being very strategic about saying, I want to go to the festivals or I want to go to the cinema, and marketing based on that. You can't market a festival film the same way you would market a cinema film. A cinema film requires almost like an event around it, which is where you bring up someone like Funke and what she does. So it's important to understand that. Thank you. I'm going to go straight to you, Sukome, and I'm going to ask you a completely different question. So we're still talking about, sort of distributing our films and international markets, international audiences. So should we focus on maybe mediums like co-producing with international producers, Should we explore that partnership with globally acclaimed distributors? What are the challenges with that? And what are the challenges with current opportunities for collaborating with international film? This is a very long question. Okay, I'm going to start with the first part of the question, which is that can Nigerian filmmakers distribute their films to the international audience through mediums like co-producing with international producers and partners with globally acclaimed distributors? I think they can.
This is an ongoing topic, you know, and I know that, you know, I was in the earlier session and there was someone in government that spoke about the co-production treaty that is being signed with Brazil.
Okay.
I'm currently working on a project. I mean, it's not necessarily a co-production, but it's by a Nigerian filmmaker that was able to access that opportunity to make that film through, you know, just working with an international crew, an international producer. I think we're at the early stages of that kind of process, you know, coming to fruition. There are pockets of things happening, you know, here and there. There are things like funds, you know, that filmmakers are accessing. But I'm just going to speak around the challenges, you know, a bit, and what I feel filmmakers should focus on. Chioma spoke about the product. People put proof of concept on YouTube and they get collaborations. You know, just someone sees it and says, oh, this is a great idea. We still don't have a lot of things, you know, in place. We were filming on the Third Mainland Bridge, you know, and we were almost shut down, you know, because the scene was a bit sensitive. And so there are those challenges, you know, around infrastructure, like locations, you know, sound stages, things that make that production come out great. But that doesn't mean that that opportunity is not there. So for instance, for Filmlab Africa, one of the things that we've tried to do with the participants, because we're working with emerging filmmakers, is to say, look, when you make your film, the whole idea of making a film is for you to be able to make another film. And for you to succeed as a filmmaker, you need that collaboration. And the approach and the attitude of the filmmaker to understanding what collaboration means by being in festivals. She spoke about festival strategy, you know, and being present, you know, and showing our capacity. You know, I think that it starts from there. Because, so we just came back from London at the Film Africa festival where we plugged in our films, and the filmmakers were immediately connecting with some distributors and filmmakers that were interested, you know, in coming to Nigeria to make films, you know, that sort of collaboration. So I think that what we need more is for filmmakers to just be able to position themselves, you know, by attending festivals, you know, by ensuring that the kind of works that they create, it's that sort of idea that just generates, you know, interest, you know, as well. So, and then we still need that advocacy. We still need government to come in a little bit more. What I mean by that is, yes, government is already engaging key people, but I think that engagement needs to be a little bit more robust. So when there are round tables, when you're calling people into the room, we need to get a little bit into the grassroots. Filmmaking is not only in Lagos. There are filmmakers in Abuja, there are filmmakers in Kogi, and there are different types of genres. There are people making documentaries. So it needs to be more inclusive, you know, so that when the results are coming out, we're not seeing more gaps. And that's the only way you can have like a wholesome, you know, opportunity for filmmakers to just grow and have access to international opportunities as well.
Okay. Well, thank you for that. Thank you. Did you want to add anything, Chioma or Charles? Did you want to add anything to it?
I think the international distribution, to be fair, it's, I'm a bit, we need to figure it out for ourselves, to be very honest. Because what's happening now is until we find real ways to monetize the films that we're making, we won't be able to keep making films, right? So the streamers have come to, you know, take content globally, but they can't save us, you know. So it's interesting because if you start, even when you do a so in the international space, when you go into this markets and you want to do co-productions, they tend to shape the story. It's authentic, it's you, but they have to see it from their lens, right? So if you're financing from Europe, they want to, you see the films that get financed, right? And it's African cinema, but it tells a certain type of story. And it tells a certain type of story that you might not want to tell. So you either adapt, but what is really key is finding our markets and how we can monetize the markets, right? Not just, YouTube industries are not built on YouTube, let's just go there. So it's more like, how can we figure out, I don't have the answer to this question, but really this kind of distribution network where we can monetize within ourselves on the continent first, to sustain us for even like global audiences and things, because you have to tell stories with a certain lens to access those funds or to access those markets. And so what would happen is filmmakers from the diaspora who are a little half Nigerian, half British, who can wear both hats, would access the money. And they would come and they would film here, and it's great because they're making great films. But it might not be. It's easier for them to access because they already have, they're already there. They understand that language. They understand how to pitch it to them. So in coming back to say how can we make those connections, it's also, we have to really think about how we can how we can earn income with our market, like he said, like thinking about it here in a sustainable way, so we can really kind of like build out and not care. Like the Bollywood style is they don't care, right? It's like they're making enough money, fine, watch their films, don't watch their films, but they're self-sustaining. So that is really, I think, the only way we can break out of this mold, but I don't. We're always having this conversation and always trying to figure it out.
Yes, you're so right, Charles. You wanted to
yeah, just briefly. I think I like the Bollywood style. That's how Nollywood started. We are still.
That's how we started.
So what has happened is that we've just had an infiltration of interest, because the typical Nollywood filmmaker, they didn't really care. We didn't care about who was watching our films or who's going to bring money. We did what was called guerrilla filmmaking. As you shoot one, you are going back to shoot the other one. So you can have a slate of films. You can have 10 films you want to release in a year. You could lose money from 7 or 8 or 9, but one will give you your hit for that year. That one will cover that whole 10 or 20 and all that, because there was a market for it and there was a demand for it. So the average Nollywood filmmaker 20 years ago, 30, wasn't really care about. When some of those collaborators started coming, we'll be looking at them, they were telling you, we want to, and we say, okay, so they were telling you, we need to go back and do one proposal, and so the average Nollywood would say, do proposal for what? To shoot film, to shoot film and all that. But what I'm trying to say in that is that that comment she made about Bollywood is really where we should be, and I think we are getting there. There are segments and vignettes of the market that we have to understand. There's that YouTube one, it just glossed over it, but there's a very strong and thriving YouTube audience and YouTube content market right now. You may not be too much of a big fans of what is going on there, but the filmmakers there, the producers there, they are seeing their money. There are hundreds of YouTube channels by Nigerian content makers and all that, but they are seeing their money. So they follow a template. So they follow a particular template, but they are seeing their money. And somebody was asking me this yesterday, is that going to last? I said, if somebody is sitting down and making $100,000, $200,000 a year from YouTube, you're asking me if it's going to last. It's definitely going to last. What you should be doing, what most of those filmmakers will do, and I've had cause to talk to a couple of them, is that they should scale. Right now, the production templates are just 1 or 2 locale, 2 or 3 scenes and all that. But if they start thinking of scaling in terms of, okay, we already have our audience, our community here. Instead of spending 5 million naira on shooting this film, let me go to 10 or 15, because I'm still going to get the money back and make the money back. That is how it grows. And why is the YouTube thriving, if I have a minute to say that too as well? The YouTube is thriving because of a couple of factors. And that's one of the things the young filmmakers should learn. 10 years ago, 6 years ago, the route to follow was that you shoot a film, you release it either in the cinema or you know, on DVD or something, and then you take it to Africa Magic, to DSTV Africa Magic, and they'll pay you whatever it is that you've agreed on. And then after Africa Magic would have shown it for like a year or so, you take it to YouTube. Then Netflix came into the market on board, and a lot of producers shot films, but they couldn't get distribution into Netflix. So Netflix would tell them, you have to wait for 1 year, 2 years or so. But anyway, the process was frustrating and long. And so someone just, out of that lot, just let me go and, why will I wait for 2 years? Let me just, out of anger or frustration, let me go and put this on YouTube. Put it on YouTube, you get 1 million views, 2 million views, I started seeing money. Oh, okay. So everybody started, so the producers who would have been waiting for years in that line, in that international distribution line, just found that I've grown my market on YouTube. I'm not going through an aggregator. I'm not going through anybody telling me no quality control in that sense and all that, but they are doing that. So that became its own sub-system, sub-distribution system by itself. So not all the filmmakers or will-be filmmakers here are going to do Quentin Tarantino kind of films. When I said earlier that you need to understand your audience, you would know the audience you want to talk to. Is your audience going to be on, if it's going to be on YouTube or it's going to be go that route? But I've also had, I can give an example of a couple of filmmakers who went on YouTube and got called by Netflix and Amazon to shoot films. The guys who did The Men's Club. Okay. The Men's Club on YouTube. I don't know whether you know that series on YouTube. It was very popular. But Amazon called them and commissioned them, gave them money and said, your next season 5 or whatever, bring it on Amazon, because they saw how popular it was, that the thing had done millions and it was very popular all over. The other one would be, I think she had a session at Afrif recently. RSA did a smart woman, I think? Smart money, yes, woman. She said it that she did it first. It went on Netflix. The second season, it was getting difficult to go on Netflix. She put it on YouTube, and she's seen her money. So you can do quality, and you can get called. So it's a mixed match of a lot of things. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for that. Round of applause for them. And what you mentioned about old Nollywood is so true. But an old Nollywood that has learned a lot of lessons and adapts for the 21st century is what I would be looking for. So thank you for those contributions. And we're going to go into I don't know if we're going to have that conversation here or whether Chioma is going to tell us later off camera. But now I wanted to ask, while we're still talking about international co-productions and all of that, is there anything that we can do in terms of talking to government, to strategize with government or any other stakeholders to achieve these results on our policies, especially with co-production treaties? It's always very interesting when you decide you want to do some level of work to find out that we have no co-production treaties with any of these countries, and we're just now getting to the point where possibly, you said Brazil might be signed. Is there any other country we have a co-production treaty with? None that I know of, but what?
There's one written with South Africa, but not
yes,
ratified.
But it hasn't been ratified, yes. So in effect, yes, that's what he mentioned, the first one. So we don't have any co-production treaties. Is there anything that we can do as filmmakers, apart from lobbying the government? Is there anything else that we can do to achieve these results?
I think the government approach is great. I think we need to have that, but also there are ways to have tripartite agreements without treaties, right? So South Africa has treaties with Canada, for example. We don't have so they're the official co-productions, and you only need those official co-production treaties because the countries are giving state funds, right?
Yes.
So if you're raising money from Europe or from Europe mainly, they have their film funds. So their film funds have certain guidelines, right? And you can only get co-producer credits or co-country credits if you're bringing in a certain amount and you have this treaty, or they're getting money from their broadcasters. So there are ways to find financing outside of this state funds, right? So there's some regional funds. So, but you have to have the co-producer in Europe that wants to work with you first, that is able to find these loopholes, right? So they're the loopholes that they can only find within their countries. Then there are also, but because South Africa has treaties, there are informal ways we can work with, even Abidjan, with Senegal. So like, it's still that idea of like thinking Pan-African first to go global, because they have treaties so you can work with them, or you can be part of their finance plan when you put it together, where it's Nigeria, Benin, Nigeria, South Africa, and then South Africa, Canada, or something like that. So there are ways to do it, but you need to, the most important thing is, who are you co-producing with, right? Like, who is your co-production partner? Are you really like wanting to make this film together? Is the story really strong in Nigeria? So I guess it's that, and then, but for the technicalities or the legalities, there are always like loopholes. But the in-country producer will be the one to guide.
Okay.
Okay.
I'm just going to quickly contribute to this. I think we need to be a little bit more organized as filmmakers. There's a lot we can do. Half of the work has to be done by the filmmakers themselves. And I'm talking in terms of how we organize ourselves. I don't know what the incentive would be for a writer to join the Screenwriters Guild. I know they're doing a lot of work at the moment. What is the motivation for a producer to join, the Producers Guild or the Directors Guild in Nigeria? And this is part of the advocacy that we need, because if we keep going, one person goes today, this production house goes today, this individual goes today, what's that term? When we go together, we go far. Yeah. So I think that in that sense, the guilds, I was so fascinated to find, I was going to do a production for a TV commercial in the UK, and I was just very lost on what to do. And someone just says, look, go to the Association of Producers Association in the UK, and you find all the help you need. And then all access to locations, to crew, everything was all in one place. And it was very easy. Whatever you needed to do insurance, everything. And I think it starts with us thinking around how we can begin to look inwards to how we can coordinate ourselves, in a kind of team playing way. And that's the way government will take us seriously. But at the moment, I feel there's a little bit of division, and individual people are trying to solve the problem. So I think there has to be that pressure, in a united, just from a united front point of view. I think that is really needed, yeah.
Thank you, Sukomi. You've actually jumped to my next question, which would be, how can our guilds and what is the state of our guilds and industry associations, and how they can become players in helping us do some of the things we've talked about, from co-production, making sure that the government is lobbied, to finding ways for us to work effectively to reach global audiences. What you mentioned is so key. We all seem to be working in silos. We're not working together, and that unity is what will help. So I just wanted to know what guilds or associations you are in, Chioma is in, and what you think they're doing, if anything.
I don't think...
Sorry to interrupt you. And just to say, I need you to be very brief with your responses, because I've been given a clock. So we're counting down.
So, briefly, I don't think that the guilds are not doing anything, but I think what we have is a multiplicity of guilds. We have over 50 or 60 or 70 guilds in the country, because every sector, every region has a guild. So you have the Edo Filmmakers Guild. In those Edo Filmmakers Guild, you have the Actors Guild inside the Filmmakers Guild. You have the Producers Guild. in the Nollywood, you have their own producers guild, you have their own actors guild.
But are they not
but
all
the
linked?
general ones that you say, the Actors Guild of Nigeria and all that,
Yes.
they are but but membership is not compulsory for all actors. So that is why, and I'm sure you guys must have heard about this, but I'm an advocate of that. That is why we need a central body. Years ago, Amaka Igwe of blessed memory, God rest her soul, she came with the idea with a few other people to set up a Motion Practitioners Council of Nigeria, MOPICON. And that thing went through years and years of research, back and forth. It was just going to be passed in the last government, by the last government sometime 8 years ago. And some people inside the industry felt that their interest would be, sort of diminished. And so they thwarted it. But the reality is beginning to dawn on a lot of us now that you need to have something like that. That's number one. Number two, one of the things we're not talking, going back to what you're talking about in terms of treaties, we don't have a film commission. When you have, most of those treaties have to do with your film commission. We only have a film, Nigerian Film Corporation. So the industry itself, just the same thing you're talking about as guilds and all that, we have to come and do a lobby to push the government to set up an act to make our film corporation become a film commission, because most of those treaties go through the film commissions. They are much more comfortable when there's a film commission representing in those. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Anything, Chioma? Any contribution? No, none. Okay. So I'm going to jump to my last question. And again, I'm going to ask everyone to contribute, but please, briefly. We're talking about film villages. We've seen a couple pop up in the last 3 years. In the last 3 or so years, I've noticed that there's been quite a number of film villages that have popped up. Now, they're popping up as film villages where you're filming a lot of period films. But then we need to establish more sustainable infrastructure like studio facilities, sound stages, and then, of course, again, very long question, improving security. I won't go into that. I'm just talking about building infrastructure, sound stages, film cities and villages. What practical steps can we, again, I know I'll let you speak. I have my own thoughts, but I'll let you say. I'll start with Chioma and then go to Sukomi and then Charles. Please, briefly, so that we can have some time to take their questions.
So for me, I think that we can build comparative advantage where we can.
Okay.
And infrastructure is so expensive because there's so much of it that doesn't depend on you, like security and cost, and
Yes.
and now the cost of living is really high. But where I feel we can build a comparative advantage is skills. So if we say, okay, like animation or VFX or something that we can contain in a way where we can use that, and our comparative advantage is young people. So we have bodies, So how can we use that, like how Andela came, for example, to say, how can we build a post-production facility where it's more manageable? You already have young people who are very kind of like a computer. So we might not be a film destination because there are countries with that comparative advantage. Yeah. South Africa has better locations, in terms of infrastructure, in terms of power, in terms of, and that's why Hollywood is going to shoot there. We can't compete with Morocco or Mauritius. So what do we have, and how can we build comparative advantage around? So I would build infrastructure around that. And we can do we can do things that require a lot of people. We can build facilities in that way. So I think that would be where I'd see it, than building like film villages where there's so many things we can't control.
Yeah, oh, that's a good point. Sukomi, great, yes.
All right.
That is a very good point.
I'll speak to an unconventional side of things.
Okay.
It's still very important that we use atmosphere when we're filming. We've not really explored, the beauty, of Nigeria in our films. We're still exploring it. And I think that it's still very important. There's still a long way to go for all the film villages and the sound stages, but we still need the actual, locations. And for me, this is still where we need to draw in the government. But at the same time, when you're filming in Lagos, we know the story. Even when you're filming in Ibadan now, the area boys now know, and it's a nightmare. You pay, they are very organized. The area boys, they are super, super organized. They don't disrupt like before. They disrupt, but there is a way you pay. They have a bank account, they have foot soldiers, yes, and they have numbers. You say, this one is number 42, Okoro of Oyigbo. You will really pay properly, and they will now send somebody to sit and watch so that another faction doesn't come to disrupt. How do we organize this madness, In
such a way
yeah,
that
because
it benefits us.
that's what we have at the moment. How do we
Yes.
organize it in a way that if the area boys can be organized, and they have
Exactly.
lieutenants, they have generals, how can we then still dialogue and
Yes,
find
and
a way
still
to
make it
formalize
work.
this,
Yes.
still informal, but I feel we need that. If
Yes.
we're shooting and we can deal with it, then it reduces that risk.
Yeah.
And filmmakers know that even if I have to pay, even if the area boys are involved, at least I have access
Yes.
to this location, and I can get what I want. Yeah.
Great. Interesting. Okay. And
Okay.
finally, Charles.
Yeah, so coming to the film village, do we need one? Yes, I think we do. You've talked about some. I think the ones you're talking about basically are the ones that were built by private, the ones, most of them doing Africa Magic or the period films,
Yes.
as it were. But the real film, it's not for lack of effort that we've not had a film village. Tinapa is there. Tinapa is more or less like a little prototype of one that you can do. But I don't think, in the broader sense, that it has dawned on us or a lot of filmmakers that we really need that in the way we need it. There was the one launched by the Lagos State government last year. But, was the New York Film Academy people? Del York, the Del York with the Lagos State government that we launched, and half the industry went to somewhere, Ekbe, to launch it. But I think since they've cut that tape, that the trees have
Nothing has happened.
overgrown because it was looking for 100 million to get the film village up. It takes a lot. I do not even think that is what I think. Like she said, we can do it in small bits.
Yes.
You can have a post-production village.
Yes.
So you just know that you're there. But the government had a little bit of plan for that with the National Theatre. The new National Theatre, there's a space there. They want to build a creative hub. So it has film that would have all those post-production. Then you have for music. Then you have for fashion. And then you have for another, tech, but unfortunately, Herbert Wigwe, who was leading that, passed away this year. So I don't know what the position of that is. But we need to just, first of all, create our hubs. In a generation to come or two, I'm sure that would be, the film village would suffice. But I do not think it is going to be something that is going to be immediate right now.
Okay, thank you, everyone. I think that we've shared some great ideas here. I'm going to just mention quickly the last thing that we said here about the infrastructure. I'm so excited about this idea that Chioma has brought. I think that the focus has been too much on trying to, as you said, compete with countries that have already sort of established their reputation when it comes to locations for international crews. So if we could, we're a country that has over 64% young people under the age of, is it 24 or 25? Is that what the numbers are? So, and a lot of them are very tech savvy. A lot of them are very interested in technology, film, in gaming. If we could focus on that is our strength, and that is something we can develop. So I hope that this is something that, we can make happen. And I don't want it to be a generation away or 2 generations.
For the film village,
Okay.
For the film village.
No, but this is a film village. It's just that it's a tech film village rather than a more traditional sort of film village. But thank you very much, guys. Thank you so much for all your contributions, all the gems that you have dropped. Can you all please give them another round of applause? And now we want to take your questions. If you have, so we have this gentleman who wants us to ask a question. We can take 2 other questions after this. Is there any other one person that has?
Good evening. My name is Olaleko Akinyele. My question really is, who is our audience really? The reason I'm asking this question is, I mean, we hear that Nigeria, we are like 200 and whatever million that we are. But again, in diaspora, what number are we really? And then to what end is trying to really capture the global audience? Who are we exactly capturing? Is it the white people or us in diaspora? And are they the ones that actually watch these movies? What number are they? And then in terms of trying to tell our stories, and she spoke about packaging, I've heard about the strategy, the festival and all of that. But again, I think that a lot of filmmakers are not even, I'm into advertising, and I'm top executive in advertising, basically. We don't collaborate with advertising agencies, for example. Like from the beginning. The other way around. Are we the ones supposed to collaborate with filmmakers?
Yeah.
Okay, fine. Okay, maybe I take that back. But again, and the reason why I'm saying that is I literally worked on King of Boys 2, launching it, on Netflix. But again, they came to us, right? And I hear you when you say it's supposed to be the other way around. But again, we are open to that. But are you also open to sharing the profits if we work around that? So I think those are my questions. I'm just not sure.
Okay, so about the audience, who is the audience or where? I think that's why I've said a couple of times, know your audience here. You have a huge audience here, first and foremost. But if I use the matrix or the numbers I have, it may not be very accurate, but I know that the streamers, the Netflixes, the Amazon Primes and all that, from their own back end, let us be very frank, Nigerian subscribers to Netflix in Nigeria alone, they're not more than 100 and something thousand. I'll shock you. Yeah, you think it's millions. No. 160 something thousand or thereabouts. 169,000 subscribers. That's the whole 200 and something million Nigerians that you have. Only 169,000 subscribers to Netflix. In South Africa, Netflix has 1.2 million subscribers, over 1.2 million. So it is the business sense for them. It may not be making sense for them because when you now have a naira that is being devalued almost before you turn your eye, the naira has devalued. It may not make sense for them to start pumping money into your market. It makes better sense. The South African rand to the dollar is 18, about 18 rand to the dollar. Nigerian naira to the dollar is 1,700, maybe 1,800 tomorrow. Anyway, so from the back end, the streamers see that your subscribers are not the ones watching here. It is your Africans in the diaspora that are watching. So you're doing the content, but the people who have the nostalgia to watch your films, basically they are watching it. So the number of Nigerians are everywhere, so in the diaspora, in America, in Europe, in Asia and all that, that is where they see in the back end that is where people are watching and all that. So it is not about, that's why I say on YouTube is a different ball game. On YouTube, because YouTube is free, everybody's got data. You could see the numbers that you are watching in Africa here. You see the numbers that you are growing. So, but on these OTTs, the big streaming premium platforms, is a different thing. We still are very, very poor in this. We are a sachet economy. Let's be frank to ourselves. We're just a sachet economy. We are giants of Africa, but in small numbers, in mass markets, just deceive ourselves really about some things. Anyway, let me.
Sorry,
does anybody have anything to add?
I wanted to just answer a second question. I think that we all have a role to play. He's talking about advertising.
Okay.
The advertisers, they're used to pitching to client and taking all the big briefs, but that's not how filmmaking works. And I think advertising has a role to play. And I'm going to say this instructively, no offense. Media and advertising, they have to stop producing films. That's what's happening. Everyone is saying, how can I get a piece of the pie? Instead of playing their own role. and saying that, how do we take filmmakers to where the money is? Because the advertisers know where the money is. Even in formulating marketing strategies and ideas that can take producers to the next level in terms of how they reach their audience, you guys have a role to play. And I'm just saying this because as a filmmaker, my business is to make films. And if you come with that idea, strategy to say, look, this is how to position your film for the audience. We know where, there is no real definition of what an audience is. There's an audience for anything you make, any kind of genre. It depends on how you're selling it. So if advertisers can come up, and say, look, this film is coming out. This is our own contribution to the film industry, for the media, and for brands to come in. I can say this, brands are even making films now. They're making TV series. I'm talking about multinational corporations, and that's wrong. Yes. And these are ideas given to them by advertisers, saying, oh, bring 200 million, and you will make this film. We'll guarantee you slots on all television stations. They are even guaranteeing them spots on Netflix, product placements, and the producers are the ones losing out. So I think that, this, and if we have government people in the house, these are things we need to start looking at. What should they be doing? Yes. What shouldn't they be doing?
Yes. Yeah. Thank you very much. Okay, we have a final question.
It's a comment.
Oh, comment.
Yes, it's a comment. Just to go off of what's to come in saying, there's domestic consumption. And I think that this responsibility is for everybody, like what he was talking about. But more than anything else, internally, for television and film, it's always been advertising that drove production in terms of the investment. Because, of course, exchange for media and, product placements is where, a lot of content money came from. And it's unfortunately twisted, in what he's said now. But it can be straightened out. It's really about us sitting together to say, you know what, at the end of the day, this money is going to pay everybody, advertisers or filmmakers or everybody, but we need to fix it. And right now, based on what we have and what we don't have, the biggest non-equity money is going to come from advertising. And that's the truth. Every other thing that everybody is providing for us is either grant funding, which doesn't allow us grow, or equity, which means you always have to sell a bit of your soul every time. That's not a bad thing, but that can't be the only money around. There has to be soft money, easier money that comes from advertising, where what you want, your ROI is eyeballs, not money. Because when equity comes in, it means the filmmaker is dying to make a profit that he has to split and share. But when he gets it from advertising and he knows it's giving you visibility, he'll kill himself to ensure that his film is seen, any way, shape, or form. So the first question is, we're not necessarily having to come to you. You have to also come to us. You have products, you want to share, you want people to see them, so let's have this conversation. But domestic consumption is our way out. There's no other way we can come out of this mess, because we are really, really in a big mess right now in the film industry.
Yeah.
One final thing.
Thank you. And I mean, honestly, you made very, salient points. And I'll give you instances, And I think I've also had that conversation with Brenda. Sometimes filmmakers also come to us. Okay, we have this film. And they already come with like a budget, right? Oh, okay, so if you are going to do certain product placements in it, premium, 50 million, this 30 million, And with even advertising right now is suffering. Yes, in the sense that you talked about our economy, it's a sachet economy. So it means that every product that we previously know as premium are now, like bottom. So it means that marketing budget has been to a very barest minimum. So you see advertisers, not the advertising agencies now, advertisers, which is the brands, wanting to spend 0.5% of what they naturally used to spend. And I agree with you, and I think we also have to have that sit down. How advertising agencies collaborate with filmmakers, but you have to also be able to come to us or let's come together to what projects do you have, which one aligns with what we want to do, and then we collaborate and we help and then we structure it. It's, like you said, it's really not all about the money, but if we can get it right, the money will come. And I think that's a good way to work.
Definitely. Yeah. We have to collaborate. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you for your questions. Thank you to our panelists for their contributions. And thank you to you, the audience, for being active participants.